Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, crypto nerds of all ages. Have you ever used one of those dating apps? Have you ever swiped and figured what happens on the back end of that? Could it be better with blockchain? Coming up, my next guest has promised to deliver love in the metaverse. All right, please welcome Zachary Martinez, CEO of TruYou. Welcome to the channel, Zachary. How are you doing today?
I'm honestly doing wonderful. How are you doing, Monty?
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, man. So this is actually take two for us. We had a trial run of this. Fantastic information, but we had some sound issues. So this is take two for us, but it's going to be even better, more efficient, more poignant. And now I know what's going on with a secret we're going to leak here in just a little bit. So I've got a little bit of inside knowledge, but we're going to hold on to it till a little later on in the interview. Before we jump into all that, though, please, for the audience who may be unfamiliar with you personally, can you give us a little bit of background on you, and then we'll jump into the TruYou app and figure out how is that going to change the landscape that's in existence today?
Sure. I am classically trained as an ICU nurse, so a lot of my background is around human biology, social psychology, dealing with helping people in all different sorts of ways.
A lot of empathy, right? I feel it. Great background to jump into a dating app where people have to find those connections. Is that what drove you to create the app in the first place? Your experience there in the healthcare world?
Well, I feel like the perseverance, skills, and experience that I've garnered over the last 3 years working as a nurse in the ICU has definitely helped. I've always been fascinated by the potential avenues available through technological innovation. One of the greatest being the potential of digital currencies, which introduce, in my opinion, an entirely new potential avenue for incentivizing interaction. Throughout the last few years, given my position, some of the most demanding duties were continuous adaptation based on critical thinking and acting as a mediator of patients and familial connection. I was a first-hand observer to the social disconnect perpetuated by current available applications, which coaxes a short-term mindset. It was basically through that and honing of those skills and an understanding of social psychology and biology that I developed TruYou, with the goal of introducing incentivized systems to facilitate human interaction.
Wow, so there's much more background and thought process that goes into this. You're talking about the psychology of connections. That's really amazing. When you see people connecting, what is it that makes TruYou different than one of the other apps that's out there now? How is that psychology come into play?
For sure. So basic apps nowadays generally fall in all the same bucket, which there's no real algorithmic matching that goes on. It's typically just bucket matching. So they just give you a giant bucket of however many people within a certain distance of you that meet whatever specifications that you have, like gender or sexual preference, and basically just let you sort through it all yourself. You spend your time, you spend your energy. I mean, these are things. Time is one of the only resources that you never get back.
True.
So one of the main goals really here was to, one, introduce a system where we can incentivize that process, basically make people want to do it more, while also making it kind of exciting and interesting.
Great. Now, I think your token is called Trust, right?
Correct.
So how does trust come into play, and how does that make it a better ecosystem to interact with?
For sure. The Trust token, as a token in itself, has the sole job of backing every single mechanism within the TruYou ecosystem. So the primary focus is on swiping. Currently, a user spends the Trust token to swipe on a user, which innately attributes a value to that swipe because the token has a value in the market. And so they're spending that value in order to swipe on the person. Now, figuratively, they're burning trust, the token trust, by sending it to the system, to the platform in itself, as a fee for that swipe, or a fee for sending a gift, or a fee for joining an AR or VR date. the task list goes on, but generally the entire mechanism is to build an ecosystem that's centered around attributing value to these innate social interactions.
Got it. Now, when somebody uses trust to buy a gift or make a connection, it's not really truly deflationary, really, right? Like those trust tokens will be recycled into the ecosystem. However, if I'm understanding this correctly, as the ecosystem grows, there's still only a defined amount of trust, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
There,
how does somebody obtain the trust outside of the initial offering?
sure, a user can either gain trust. Well, technically, there's a few mechanisms that are in the works. One of which being the staking system within app. So you can stake the trust token, and it gives you a discount on swiping or using other features within the app. On top of that, you get a staking reward on a daily basis that you can basically take from and use however you want within the app. Another way is obviously you can buy it from the market at whatever price the currently available market kind of prices it at.
Sure.
We're also going to I keep saying innate, we're going to basically put this new structure within the app where you can purchase the trust token potentially straight from USD. Ideally, just kind of simplifying that process for the end user, so they can have access to the app without needing this deep crypto knowledge.
Got it. So embedded in the app, that might be the easiest way to get it. You can get it on marketplaces as well, and you could I guess you could buy it on the open market. So there's real world use for it. We're talking about staking here and using it. I think that's really, really critical. So it's not just sort of a token to hold for access, let's just say. They actually need to expend it and use it, or they can stake it. So people are encouraged to hold a certain amount of it. I think that's key when people look at the tokenomics of it. I didn't want to jump into the tokenomics right away. I think it was good to have that sort of background to understand, okay, what are we going to use this token for? But there has been some questions raised from the community about token releasing, because you had some pre-seed investors into the token. I want to bring up a chart here, and I think this will look familiar here for you. There we go. And I was hoping that you could walk us through this chart and explain, what was that initial, release? What did it look like? What's the timing? I see, lots of bar graphs. It looks like in waves here, and team tokens come into play too. And the community is always asking, okay, so how do we know, the team's not bought in? When are they getting released? And so let's get that out in the open and let everybody know. Go ahead and walk us through that.
Yeah, for sure. It gets incredibly interesting because this chart, some might notice, some with keen eyes, that this chart is just slightly different than the chart that we shared within our public sale announcement the other day. That's completely and solely through us making iterations to this scheduling based on feedback from the community. Mm-hmm. One of the main changes that we made, we initially had private sale and public sale coming out in very low percentages early on, around month 2. Now we push back private sale distribution to month 6, so they don't get their first percentage until month 6. Public sale is month 5. Pre-sale gets their tokens immediately, so they can basically take advantage of a current market price, which we did decrease the IDO price of trust as well from 0.07 algo to 0.05 algo. We've transferred that algo pricing to USD based on the price of algo at the time of sale. So you can actually see straight up that the pricing is actually not so significantly different than it was at the time. And then on top of all of that, team tokens don't even get released until month 20. So we are massively incentivized to not only build the ecosystem, but to get these tokens cycling around as much as humanly possible before month 20 so that we can continue to generate revenue for the future.
Right. Yeah. So that's key there. So people know that, hey, you're bought in. It's in your best interest to make sure that the ecosystem is really kind of moving along. You're bringing on users. You're bringing on folks who can, find those connections. Some people may just want to stake, I think, and that's okay too. But your primary focus is to get people to use the app on a regular basis. Now we'll take the chart down and circle back around to the app itself. So initial audience, I have to assume, is going to be targeted towards crypto-friendly folks, people who are, really kind of, familiar with the ecosystem, comfortable having a wallet, comfortable with keys, that sort of thing. But is the idea to really narrow it down and work on that niche, or is this going to be something that is competing on a wider scale with people who don't even realize that it's blockchain behind the scenes?
I mean, end goal, obviously, is to make it completely seamless to where the user doesn't even understand that they're using crypto to begin with. We want to integrate it into the system so that it's as easy to interact with as humanly possible. So basically, the current way that the market is set up, we are targeting a crypto audience initially, because that's the audience that's most familiar with the Algorand blockchain and giving us feedback on kind of our initial functionalities. The goal over time really is just to make sure that we reach out to millennial Gen Z between 18 to 24. We already have specific cities with millennial populations greater than 20% that we're going to advertise in. We already have specific demographics of based on your gender, based on your ethnicity, and the differences in community and social interaction that takes place. There's a significant difference in the level of interaction between, like, let's say, Hispanic community and Caucasian community. There's the way that the family dynamics work is completely different, and so that's something that we're really hoping to kind of hit on, is to hit them where they're most interested, to kind of grab their interest where their interest lies.
Great. Now, are those overlapping with the crypto, centric cities, the Austins, the Miamis, or is it completely different because you're working with just, the demographics of a general population?
It kind of depends on what specific market you're trying to hit. A lot of crypto-centric cities are highly millennial, because obviously we're the generation that's most likely to kind of work with newer technologies.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, I would think so. So let's talk about the IDO. Time frame, roughly, 3 or 4 weeks from now, I think, something along those lines?
I'd say that's a very safe schedule, yeah.
Okay. And simultaneously, along with that, you've got a beta test, I think, right? That should be, released somewhere along the same time frame?
Around the same time frame, although the beta test is pretty much primarily going to be centered around testnet, so we're going to make sure that our contracts are sound early.
Got it. Okay. Now, you've already had alpha out there. How was that process? What kind of feedback did you get? Did you have to shift gears on the fly? What lessons did you learn?
It was mainly team centered, so we didn't really want to release what would be technically considered an unfinished project to the general community, because then we feel that the feedback we would get wouldn't be as helpful as it would be kind of general team wise.
Right.
We did kind of shift gears a lot, kind of making sure that the ingrained machinations made sense over time. Like, why would somebody want to do this? Well, the app can pay you over time, and that's kind of where our newer feature sets come in, including one that you kind of hinted on earlier on.
Okay. Now, somebody who's looking at this IDO in several weeks, and they hear staking, they hear, your plans, and they sound great to get new users on board. But somebody who's thinking long term is going to ask, okay, well, how is TruYou going to make money? What's the revenue plan here? Because if I buy tokens, if I buy trust and I want to stake it there, I want to make sure that the business is solvent. It's going to be around for a long time. So walk us through the revenue model, so that we've got that comfort level of what's going to happen in the next year and a half, 2 years, something along those lines.
Sure. First, I'd like to kind of make known that I typically don't like to think in time intervals as short as 1 to 2 years. My shortest is typically 5.
Okay.
So thinking 5 years ahead, our main general revenue generation technique is going to be through platform aggregated fees. So there's a percentage that goes to the team wallet for every single transaction. And so that's one of the main reasons that it's so important for us to cycle the token through the ecosystem continuously. I mean, if you did the math, Tinder gets, I think on its peak day, 1.4 billion swipes. That would clear our entire supply 14 times over in a single day. So it's incredibly important that we keep these tokens circulating, otherwise the system jams up. So platform fees for sure. Sponsorships, we're going to be hopefully sponsored by partnerships with metaverse and Web3 directed social applications. There's a lot of newer, people are selling property on the blockchain. They're building their own metaverse societies.
Yeah.
These populations are perfect, basically, for TruYou to kind of jump in and say, hey, you can interact with each other, but how would you like a closer social connection? Let's introduce TruYou into the picture. It's already got crypto, everything that you're already dealing with. It's just makes it easier for you to become deeper ingrained in the society that you're already in.
Do you anticipate that a majority of the folks that make connections will make connections virtually, maybe a metaverse type of a connection, or some type of video conference like this maybe, or something along those lines, before they ever meet in person?
100%.
If they ever do.
The dynamics of the social gratification system of the brain has changed over the last 3 years, for sure. A lot of people are becoming more socially isolated, and that's one of the major issues that we're seeing, is that issues with depression and loneliness are starting to arise all throughout the US in numbers that we've never seen before since the Great Depression. So it's going to be incredibly important to make sure that social connection aspect of it is highlighted most of all. I mean, above all else, I want people to be able to connect with each other, to have that ability to interact.
I am reminded now, and I'll tee you up for a release here, of a movie called Gattaca, and several others actually. Gattaca's not the only one, where in the future relationships are really strategized. People are paired up based on like genetics and algorithms, and it's very much controlled. And something like this might sound like they've pinpointed it on 85 different points of interest that this is the connection. How do you insert some natural randomness into the mix and make things enjoyable and fun, and give a little bit of an excitement, a little spark there into something that could be very, very controlled?
Sure. So a way to introduce randomness and excitement into the system in itself would be through one of the features that we hope to showcase following our launch, which is the mirror. It's an in-app integration where it basically randomly gives you a time that you're supposed to open up your app. And then at that time, if you have the app open, it automatically pairs you with another user that's looking at the app at the exact same time. If you don't interact within a certain interval of time, it knocks you out and puts you back in the running to be met with another person, as a way just to kind of give that initial push, that initial grasp of being able to speak with somebody and kind of have that connection, because it's that initial spark that typically pushes everything along.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. The ability to just sort of get, instantly paired up with someone, and there's very little pressure, because it might be somebody in your hometown, it might be somebody, thousands and thousands of miles away for all we know, and you've got to have a metaverse, cafe date kind of a deal set up. And then, so many people meet that way in today's world already. For instance, so I met my wife. I was living in Detroit. She was living in California. It happened to be just a phone call, but it was a long distance thing to begin with. And lots of relationships start that way these days. So I don't think that the distance really means what it used to now, because we can have these instant conversations and virtual locations to go and visit and really get to know someone. And it feels like it's less pressure initially to get to know someone. So I like that feature quite a bit. I'm really stoked about it. I think that the audience is going to be stoked about it, and the users, you're going to get quite a few users who I think are just interested in that. It's nice to see, the normal stuff, okay, they get to pick and choose, but the randomness of it, I think is going to be exciting. Where you're just paired up with someone. Okay, sounds good. So we figured out, all right, we've got an IDO coming up. Here's what the trust token is. Here's how it's going to be used in the system, staking, where it's going to be available, what the revenue model is, which is very interesting, these platforms, sponsorships, and the reach that you're looking at. It all sounds very well thought out. I'm really excited to just see the future of this kind of grow and see what it becomes in the near future. Is just a bystander who, I don't know, we might see, .algo connections all over the country now, huh?
You're getting it.
all over the world. All right. Well, before we let you go, anything else we want to let the audience in on regarding the upcoming launch? Any other, where would they follow you? What kind of social media outlets would they touch base with?
We are on Twitter, me personally, as ZTruBeing. TruYou, official TruYou platform is, every single platform you could possibly think of: Reddit, Telegram, Discord. All of it's TruYou official. So it's incredibly easy for us to get there. And another note I really want to share is, as in a person watching this video, make sure you take a look at our public sale medium again, because there have been alterations since the initial release to kind of accommodate for these changes that we're making to kind of further benefit the Algofund community.
Yep. I appreciate your willingness to listen to the community and shift gears so quickly. And I think the community really appreciates the fact that you paid attention. You listened and you shifted gears to sort of make sure it's a fair and balanced process. So, Zachary, I'm excited to see what happens here over the next several weeks. We're going to see a lot of you as you sort of gain momentum until this next launch. You've got your plate full, my friend. But I'm hoping that you'll visit us again near the launch time.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be lovely to do that. Absolutely.
All right. Sounds good. All right, everybody. As always, my name is Monty, and I am your crypto nerd.
Bye, everybody.